Okay, I'm cutting a nice new stone, Mintabie, and I'm going to start by getting some initial measurements. We've got a width here, a maximum width of 26, and down near this end it narrows to basically 20 millimeters and 19 and a half. That's in this area. So that's a nice good square profile, and the length is just about exactly 40. I've tried this several ways in several different directions. It's all 39 point something. So that's so basically we're dealing with something that's, I'd say that's average width of 25 and the length of, say, 40. At this end, this pole, it's 5.7 millimeters thick. The opposite pole, it's 7.14, in the center 7.54. If we take the very center of the thing, it's basically about 7.5 in the middle, and down as narrow as, well, at the very tip like this, it's about 6, and that's, so 6 is about the thinnest, between 7.5. So we've got 40 by 25, and between about 6.5 and 7.5, or approximately 6 to 7.5 millimeters thick. Okay, we're going to take a good look at it. The stone weighs almost exactly 53 carats, and this is not wet. This side has a slight convexity to it, or neutral. This side has a slight concavity. This side, we'll call this the top. The top is more or less smooth, which is good. The bottom is rough and has some deep indentations there. We may be able to use that side, but my experience is when you've got these deep indentations, there's a reason that they're there, and it's either termination of a color bar or some other problem underneath it. So it's not just an irregularity at the surface necessarily, although in some instances it may be. We can look down. One way to determine which is the A side of the stone, which is the side of the stone that should be the viewable side, is to have an angle cut like that, and see what kind of color you get from that side. This one, it looks pretty good looking down onto the top. There's not much to look at from the bottom, which I guess is good. So I don't know. I look at the color bars, and it's hard to distinguish color bars. It's just solid skin to skin. You can get an idea. There's a bluish one, and it looks like it may pick up there. It's the areas between color bars that create areas of potch or cloudiness, and sometimes associated with sand. So I notice the red in this side is at the bottom. I follow it around. It's hard to see there because that's cut at an angle. The red here, there's some red at the top, there's some red sort of in the middle, and on this side it's there. And this looks like a color bar there. I think we can see this a color bar there, and so it's slightly angled down like that. So the color bar is angled from this top right to this bottom left, ever so slightly, but that will figure into it. This is the thickest side, so we may need to take more off there to even it out. That always causes, it's a potential problem when these color bars aren't parallel to the surface of the stone, and you have to follow that very closely. It's a beautiful stone. The goal here is to create the goal, as with most opals, at least in my hands, is to create the largest possible cut stone from it. So I would like to get most of this in. I've considered that since this is so close to uniform, I've actually traced the stone and I've put an ellipse template on there, and there's not too much loss, I'd have to say. With this one, this can't be more than, I think you need a little calculus to figure this one out, but I don't think that's more than 10% of the surface. This may be 12 to 15, just guessing. So to make it, if I can get the whole surface exposed, and if the orientation is good, either like this, the opposite way, or this way, or this way, in any of the four ways that it'll hang, just as long as the color isn't at an angle, then I will cut an ellipse. Otherwise, I'm going to leave it as a freeform cabochon. If we look at the edge of this that we just did, there's some areas that might cause difficulty. There's a little crack into there. I hope that's not a real crack. There's a crack in the bottom. One on the bottom is certainly acceptable. There's one in there at the bottom. Had to worry about this one here. It's a fine balancing act. I know that if I can get a large stone out of this, even 20 carats, would be less than half of the weight. That would be pretty good. Can't help but notice this step down here. This is on the top. That's always a problem, and that may coincide with the loss of this color bar here. It seems to drop there. So it's just a risk all the way around. There are no guarantees with rough opal, and this one's very expensive, but you just hope for the best.